Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade about how to empower your business or career by getting trade expertise. My name is William Barnes-Graham, the Executive Editor at the Chartered Institute, and I'm delighted to be bringing you today's webinar as it's a topic that is really quite important. Research has repeatedly found that businesses that trade internationally are more productive, last longer, and employ more people. On the next slide, to help equip businesses with the expertise that is needed to make the most of overseas business opportunities, we've today published a new report on 7 key skills for global trade success. To trade internationally successfully often requires taught expertise because if you don't know what you're doing in international trade, you could risk non-compliance with rules and standards, culminating in fines and penalties. You could lose money by overpaying duties or being caught out by fluctuating currencies. Or your goods could even get lost or stuck somewhere overseas if your supply chains aren't properly managed. So please do check out the new report to get a sense of what skills you and your colleagues should be looking to invest in and gain in order to avoid these risks. You can access this paper on our website, export.org.uk, through the link which I've posted in the chat, or through the QR code which is on screen at the moment, and this QR code will be on for much of the webinar. Now, on the next slide, today's webinar will consist of 2 panel discussions. On the first panel, it is my delight to welcome Sandra Cooper and Steve Horwell from the Chartered Institute. Sandra is a customs and trade specialist with over 20 years experience in international trade, having previously worked as a business specialist for Latin America at the Departments of Business and Trade. Steve is an apprenticeship success delivery manager who previously spent over 15 years in the British Royal Air Force and in more recent years has overseen the imports of high-end classified military technology to the UK. So some very relevant experience there today. On the next slide. In the second panel, we'll hear from 2 people who've taken the time to gain trade expertise through training and qualifications. Richard Williams is a logistics and admin manager at Concrete Canvas and is someone who's taken 4 of the Chartered Institute's training courses to equip him with the expertise required for this role. Concrete Canvas are also members of ours and are currently selling all over the world in all 6 inhabited continents. And last but definitely not least, Lindsay Hogg is a director and founder of Hogg Logistics. Lindsay founded the company while 8.5 months pregnant and has since seen the company grow significantly, culminating in it being the only business in the Northeast to win a King's Awards for Enterprise in International Trade. Hogg Logistics is also a member of ours, with Lindsay a graduate from both our training courses and qualifications. So as ever, a brilliant panel for today's webinar. I hope you agree. Now on the next slide, we're going to run a quick poll to get a sense of what you think is the most important skill in international trade. And the options there include interpreting rules and legislation, numeracy and accounting, logistical planning, product knowledge, and IT and data. While you're answering that poll, the usual housekeeping notes from me. Firstly, you can contact me with any comments or questions using the question panel on the GoToWebinar, and that's usually on the right-hand side of your screen, or you can click the asterisk kind of icon in your start bar. We hope to get to a number of your questions today, but please note we cannot guarantee that we will get to every question in the allocated time, and today that is about 45 minutes. Secondly, you will receive a recording of the webinar in a follow-up email we will be sending over the next couple of days. I'll give you a few more seconds to answer that poll. Lots of interesting results coming through already, so thank you everyone for responding. 3, 2, 1, and here are the results. So perhaps not too surprisingly, in a post-Brexit landscape where everything's been changing quite a lot, over half of you have said interpreting legislation. 28% of you said logistical planning, 14% of you product knowledge. Not very many on IT and data or numeracy and accounting, but we may find out why those are maybe unheralded skills in international trade. However, on the next slide, we're going to start moving into the actual webinar itself. So if we move on another slide, please. We'll welcome onto the stage Sandra Cooper and Steve Horwell for the first panel. Sandra, great for you to join us today. We're today discussing how to equip businesses with the skills needed to succeed in international trade. But first of all, why does this matter? Why does it matter that businesses are empowered to trade internationally?
Well, I think for this, first we have to go on about why it's so important to trade internationally, okay? Because we know that companies that trade internationally, they have this big advantage of being able to offer their goods or services beyond their own home country boundaries, okay? They can make them accessible to customers worldwide. But this broader reach, of their products and services can help them connect with diverse customer bases, tap into different economies and cultures, and also understand various consumer behaviors. Okay. In contrast, if someone is trading just domestically, they will operate just in one single country, serving local customers within the confines of that specific economic environment, regulations, and also as well the consumer preferences. Now, when they engage internationally, trading, companies can achieve faster growth by entering new markets or expanding their customer base, and they can benefit from economies of scale. Now, this approach helps them mitigate risks that are associated with the fluctuations in a single market economy, okay, and diversify also revenue streams. And this would lead eventually to a stronger global brand recognition, and they can leverage this brand equity across different markets, and this will solidify a company's presence on a global scale. But there's always a but. However, international trade also introduces increased complexities and risks, okay, along with significant opportunities. Why? Because they are exposed to multiple markets and multiple operational environments. And although trading internationally is not as straightforward as domestic trade, companies can capitalize on the great opportunities that international trade presents to them. Okay, so companies need to equip themselves with the required skills and knowledge to successfully explore these new markets, grow existing ones, but do it in a compliant and effective manner. That's the main thing. Okay, that's why it's so important.
Thank you, Sandra. And I think the point around spreading risk, I think, is important. Is if you're only selling in a domestic market, you're really you're at risk of that market having a downturn and that really impacting all of your sales. So I think that's a really important point. And Steve, to bring you in at this point, we're talking about international trade, and a lot of businesses online might already be doing plenty of sales domestically. So what is about international trade that requires its own skill set?
I think domestically, like you said, there's almost like a single market. Legislation will change, but there's normally advance warning of that, and the industry is able to adapt to that a lot quicker as a result. But what I've noticed since being involved in the international trade side of things is how quickly the landscape can change, whether that is as a result of world events or even legislation in other countries changing. Brexit being a prime example, and everything that changed as a result of that. And obviously, we've got to be able to adapt quickly to ensure that the trade doesn't suffer as a direct result of that. So there's a level of dynamism that I see in the international trade that is not, I wouldn't say as relevant, but as evident in the domestic markets.
Yeah, I mean, globally, it's been so much going on. And so I think that's a really important point. And presumably as well, because you're dealing with more and more different types of markets, you've got more regulations and standards to follow. So you have to have an understanding of those in order to succeed in those markets too.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Thanks, Steve. And Sandra, I mean, we've launched this paper today about the skills we're recommending businesses or trade professionals to have in order to succeed in overseas markets. Could you talk through this paper and what the skills are in the paper?
Definitely. Well, what I can say is when I read the paper, obviously it brought back some memories from when I first started doing international trade back in 1998, because you spot them correctly. Okay, so understanding rules, first of all, is something that is very, very important. Why? Because you need to understand how to classify your goods. What are the customs procedures that are required for moving these goods, and also the documentation that is essential to ensure that all of this will help you ensure that you have the correct tariff. Also, it will ensure that the operation runs smoothly and avoiding penalties in the future. Okay. So then from there, we moved into knowing how goods are made. That's very, very important. And for me, it's something that is essential to know your product, okay? Understanding the rules of origin, okay? This will help you, establish the origin of your goods, okay? You need to understand the origin and the manufacturing process, okay? This is very important, okay, for meeting compliance standards and also benefiting from what we call preferential tariffs that come from preferential trade agreements. Then we have numeracy, okay? And I can tell you, you need to have strong skills in valuation, duty calculation, and currency management. These are required to then accurately determine the cost and manage any financial risks in international trade. Then we can talk about management, okay? And efficiently handling logistics, supply chain, and operations. It's crucial for ensuring the timely delivery and the smooth transportation of the goods, while also, managing potential risks such as delays or disruptions that do happen. And communication, first of all, negotiating your Incoterms, the effective use of your Incoterm, working with intermediaries, and also cross-cultural communications. These are vital for preventing misunderstandings and ensuring as well the smooth trade relationship. Then we talk about the systems, the IT systems that are required for trading. We need to become familiar with trade-specific systems such as CDS or the NCTS for transit, cargo, and data management tools like those will be essential for compliance to be able to track and also streamline trade processes. The last one will be leadership, very, very important, because there's a need for strategic vision, for decision making and team management. This is crucial to be able to navigate global trade. To ensure there is alignment across departments, they all buy into this international trade and they will all put, their efforts into making things happening, okay? And then they will be able to respond to market and regulatory changes as they should. By having these skills, businesses then will be very well equipped to handle the complexities and also the opportunities of international trade.
Terrific. Thank you, Sandra. Really great summary. So those 7 skills: understanding rules, knowing how goods are made, numeracy and accounting, project management, communication, IT and data, and leadership. And as noted at the start, you can scan the QR code to read about those in more detail. So thank you, Sandra, for that answer there. Steve, just on those skills, earlier in the webinar, we asked a poll in which people on the line today said what they thought was the most important. Over half, 55%, said interpreting legislation, followed by 28% who said logistics. So just following on from that poll, to what extent do you agree with the audience on their finding there, or do you think kind of other skill areas are more important for traders to be aware of?
I'm certainly not going to argue with the audience on that one. I think the legislation is key to everything because that's where the compliance ties in. And if compliance isn't done correctly, there's huge penalties. And it's not just the penalties, it's the risk to business. And I think Sandra mentioned earlier about mitigating risk. All companies don't want even one small thing to go wrong that could become public because it's embarrassing, it damages reputation. So those skills that we've touched on in the white paper, if those can be embedded within a workforce, the chances of compliance failures are far, far lower. So no, I've certainly got nothing to argue with there. The legislation is key, and that's where the expert knowledge is contained within the Chartered Institute is so vital to businesses to make sure they don't trip up in those areas.
Terrific. Thank you, Steve. I think it's probably always the right answer to not argue with the audience. I think that's a good response. I mean, Sandra, just in terms of the Chartered Institute's expertise, I mean, how can someone go about getting some of the skills we've been talking about so far?
Well, I think is all exciting, you know, when someone is looking into improving their skills into international trade. So I can tell you that to acquire these skills, well, individuals can pursue relevant education or training. Okay, they can also seek support via mentorship from any experienced traders and gain practical experience. It could be done through trading simulations or real world practice. Okay, continuous learning and staying up to date, and this is something I'm telling you after 25 years of experience in this, is a never-ending learning, okay, in international trade. Why? Because things change. Okay, you need to keep updated with market trends. Okay, that's very important. That's key.
And in terms of the Vicharted Institute itself, we do training and qualifications in this area. So could you say a bit more about Vicharted Institute's training support?
Well, the Charter Institute offers a range of training programs and qualifications, and these are designed to enhance trading skills and knowledge for all levels, okay? All levels means that we cater to all individuals at all levels of expertise, addressing essential aspects of global trade. Now, the structured training that we offer, the programs that we have, they aim to provide both like theoretical knowledge and practical skills. Now, currently, we seem to be finding that there is a shift in the interest in our practical workshops, okay? These practical workshops, they focus on critical areas such as classification, valuation, export licenses, and these sessions prioritize interactions and discussions, which makes a very valuable atmosphere for learning, okay? It's a great and involved experience for everybody.
Steve, I'd like to bring you in as well, because you've got a real experience in apprenticeships. So a lot of people, I think, would be familiar with training courses and qualifications. But I mean, how does the apprenticeship kind of levy and scheme work, and how can businesses get support through this initiative?
Okay, with regards to the apprenticeship levy, it was introduced in 2017. Essentially, any company with a payroll of over £3 million per annum pays 0.5% of that into an apprenticeship levy to HMRC. That money can only be used for apprenticeship delivery. It also has a use by date on it of 24 months. If those funds aren't used within the 24-month period, they just revert back to the Treasury. What a lot of companies don't realise is they just see a levy pot accrue, and at the 24-month stage, it stays almost static. The reason for that is there's money dropping out as there's money dropping in. So it's of huge advantage to companies to take essentially free training. They've already paid for this. So rather than give the money back, it is worthwhile. But only 2% of it, this is only in England as well, I must add. Only 2% of employers within England actually pay into the apprenticeship levy. So there's another way that apprenticeships are funded, and that's a co-investment model. Now, the ESFA will fund 95% of the cost of the qualification, leaving only a 5% residual fee to the employer. So, for example, we deliver the International Freight Forwarding Specialist at level 3. The maximum funding band for that is £9,000. If you're a levy payer, that is what you would pay. If you were a business that doesn't pay into the levy because your payroll is under £3 million, you would pay 5%. The cost for that training would be £450, and there's no hidden costs. There's no extras on top of that. So you are getting 95% of that qualification paid for. In terms of the benefits to a company, they're profound. One of the key misunderstandings with apprenticeships is the word itself. There's an assumption that this is only available to school leavers. There is no upper age limit on apprenticeships. The oldest person that we've enrolled on a qualification is 62 years of age. The only thing that matters is that people meet the eligibility criteria. So that means they have to have enough time left to run on their contract that would see them reach the expected end date of the apprenticeship. The team cohesion that you get from apprenticeship delivery is massive, and it's also understated massively, because when you've got an apprentice, they have a mentor within the workplace. That's normally a more experienced member of staff, obviously. They get an understanding not only of what their own job role is, but what the role of the mentor is. And that can be quite inspirational for the apprentice themselves, which then takes us on to the next real bonus, and that's career progression and personal development for the apprenticeship, where they can actually see they're being invested in as a member of staff, and there's a genuine career pathway open to them. It's not they're sitting in the same role doing the same thing with no vision for their future. And it's something on apprenticeships that we cover, even from the enrolment appointment, what a career pathway would, could and should look like for any apprentices. With any knowledge pack, you're given the essential basics of what something is. You're given that knowledge, that information, but that's not all there is to being able to operate within a role. So apprenticeships cover not just the knowledge, but they cover the skills and the behaviours as well. It's referred to as KSBs. We will teach the softer skills that someone needs to succeed, not just in their role, but within the workplace, to become a better team player, a more effective member of the operation. And that in turn gives managers confidence that their staff are operating at the same level, and it can be some level of standardization when it comes to appraisals.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. That's a really really interesting account there, just of what great opportunity there is with apprenticeships. It seems quite underreported in kind of broader media, but there's a great opportunity there, particularly how it ties into things like career paths as well. That seems really important. And I think that point about how you can't be too old to do an apprentice, that anyone can do it at any stage of their career as long as they're eligible. That seems a really important point to make.
And what I would say, apprenticeships, they can feed in. It's like a stepping stone almost in some instances. We deliver 4 apprenticeships at the moment. We do supply chain warehouse operative level 2. We do the international freight forwarding specialist level 3. Those are obviously logistics based. They're relevant to the industry. But we also deliver 2 management qualifications, a team leader level 3 and an operational manager level 5. It's not uncommon for somebody to do the international freight forwarding specialist, complete that apprenticeship, and in 2 or 3 years they would then move on to do a team leader role or an operational manager role. And what we like to do is reignite that passion for learning within the workforce, so they're not afraid of that next step. They've also got the opportunity to use the academy then for specific courses that will benefit them, whether that was to do with UK trade tariff, to do with specific customs regulations. They can bolt those on after an apprenticeship to give them an even broader knowledge base.
Terrific. But look, folks, we're going to have to stop wrapping up this part of the webinar. But me, Steve and Sandra, thank you for joining us and for giving that information. Some really great advice there for sure. So just for the next poll, just as I give these guys a breather, I'm just going to run I'm just going to talk a little bit about our training solutions very quickly. So we have a range of training solutions helping you to ensure you have the up-to-date trade skills needed to do business overseas compliantly, successfully and sustainably. Whether it's with a trainer in a virtual classroom, in your own time for our suite of e-learning courses, bespoke courses delivered to your teams in-house, or a longer duration, more in-depth qualification. We have a great variety of training solutions for whatever your needs may be. These courses cover the full spectrum of trading customs processes, from managing supply chain partners to completing customs declarations. On the next slide and poll, we're keen to get a sense of which of these options is most appealing or relevant to you and your business's needs. So I'll launch that poll now, the options being tutor-led training, e-learning, qualifications, and apprenticeships. We've had a couple of good questions just while you're answering that poll. We've had a couple of good questions come through from the audience. So Sandra, if I may, we've had a question come in from Victoria, who asks, many businesses I've come across enter international trade but haven't received any formal education. What are the risks of entering trade without learning these skills if others have done it before?
Yeah, I think I agree with Victoria. That's been my experience as well throughout my years as in advisory roles in international trade. I have also come across many companies that have started their journeys in international trade in a reactive way. Okay, they found themselves exporting or importing without any formal education, and they were learning as they went along on the job. Okay, but knowing not just what we do, but why we do it is very, very important. It's crucial. Okay, and this is why we need formal training, education, apprenticeships, qualifications. Okay, we need to be prepared, because if not, okay, the results could be, you know, of not having formal training. It could result on regulatory challenges, not having proper knowledge of regulations, and individuals can face all sorts of problems, legal issues, and, you know, face some fines or even imprisonment. Okay. Now, also there are financial vulnerabilities. So if you have a limited understanding of currencies, payment methods, and trade agreements, this is going to lead to significant financial setbacks. Also, there could be some supply chain disruptions, because inadequate or zero training may cause disruptions in logistics and customs processes. And this will lead to border delays that at the same time bring some financial difficulties. Now, no formal training can also contribute to damaging the reputation of an organization, because if you are mismanaging trade, okay, this immediately will have an effect on the company's success, as you can imagine. So as you can see, investing in education and training can help reduce these risks and enhance trade outcomes.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Well, thank you everyone for responding to the poll. That's going to be really useful for us at the Institute as feedback. So thank you for responding. But also thank you to Steve, Sandra, and also to Victoria for the question. So we'll move on the next slide. You'll see that we're moving on to our second panel. And we're about to hear now from two trade professionals who've empowered their careers and businesses through training and qualifications. So it's my delight to welcome Richard Williams from Concrete Canvas and Lindsay Hogg from Hogg Logistics. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
Richard, you're joining us from Concrete Canvas's head offices in Wales, I believe, today. First of all, could you just say a bit about your company's story and how you came to work there?
Yep, so I'm Richard. I'm the logistics and admin manager for Concrete Canvas, and essentially our product is concrete on a roll. So our product will start off with a fully flexible product, and then once you spray it with water, it sets and it's rock hard. So the concept originally was to use the material for shelters, and as the years have gone on, it's been evolved for several other applications. So it's used throughout the world. Historically we've shipped to over 100 countries, and yeah, we've gone to some very interesting places like the Congo, Japan, Malaysia, Australia. So we've gone to pretty much, you name it, we've gone there. And how I came to work with Concrete Canvas. So I was originally a freight forwarder for a local company called Rhys Davis Logistics. The opportunity came to work with Concrete Canvas. I liked the product, so I jumped at the chance to work there. I started off as a senior office assistant, but as our trade grew and the majority of our turnover, around about 80% plus of our turnover, is exported out to the country, it became apparent that we needed to get expertise into logistics and exports, and that's where I came in.
Terrific. I mean, it's an ingenious product, I have to say. It's remarkable. It must make it easier to transport much bigger bulks of quantity of materials around the world as well. So it seems very, very, very intelligent. Richard, you've also done courses with the Institute, I suppose, to support you with your job. So could you say a bit about which courses you took and why you decided to do training in customs and trade skills?
Yeah, sure. So I started off doing courses with yourselves from December 2020. So my first course was customs procedure and documentation. Then I went on to advanced exporting in January 2021. And then again, we evolved into advanced guide to completing customs in July this year. And I've also done the trade finance and letter of credit courses with the Institute of Export. And the reason why we decided to take them is not only myself that have taken these courses, several of my colleagues have taken them as well, is that from my experience, the most that you've tended to learn in logistics is through via experience. So doing these courses is a way of reassuring yourself that you're actually doing your job correctly. So it was very vitally important for us, as we are a predominantly exporting company, to make sure that what we are doing is right. And if it's not right, then we need to act fast to make sure that we are doing it correctly.
Terrific. It's almost like a peace of mind thing is as important as some of the other aspects sometimes. And great to hear you've got colleagues going through the same process. Lynn, if I can bring yourself, great to have you on the panel today. I've interviewed you a few times down the years, but it's great to finally have you on one of our webinars as well. For the audience today who are newer to your story, could you say a little bit about how you ended up becoming a King's Award winning logistics business?
Of course, yes. I founded the company when I was 8.5 months pregnant. I'd always been kind of in this industry for a good few years beforehand, and I loved it. I loved everything about international trade, and I loved learning, and I wanted to do a good job. And when my circumstances changed at 8.5 months pregnant, I thought, I don't want this to be my story. I was a little bit tied to where I would go from there. You know, I probably wouldn't have got a job at 8.5 months pregnant. This was all down to a disagreement with my previous employer over my maternity leave. So I decided to set up a company when I should be packing my hospital bag, and we kind of started. My dad's always been in the industry for about 40 plus years, so he stood beside me, and we founded Hub Global Logistics together. We started out in an office with no window, over the moon to be there, you know, just wanting to do a good job and wanting to kind of pick up where we'd left off, just at a different desk. And we were so determined to do right by our customers that I did, reach out to the Institute to kind of upskill and get some qualifications in writing, so people knew we weren't just saying we were good at what we do, we could back that up with the actual skills. Our customer base grew pretty quickly. We hit the ground running, I think a lot quicker than we expected. We were eventually able to move to an office that had a few nice windows and a few nice views outside, and we grew a little bit in terms of staff as well. Our King's Award, I think that swept us off our feet, to be honest. We're just a small family business wanting to do a good job and wanting to excel in international trade, and we kind of, we just thought we'll give it a shot. We knew we met all the criteria, and we were striving for excellence, and you can't get much better than a King's Award. So we give it a go, and we were the first and only winners in North East England. So we were able to shout from the rooftops about that, and had a lovely day going along to Buckingham Palace to meet King Charles. So it's been a journey. We're only 5 years young, but we've kind of went from 0 to 100 pretty quickly.
It's an incredible story. I'll post a link actually to an interview we did recently in the chat, just for people who aren't so aware. But yeah, amazing story, Lindsay. And you touched on the qualifications that you did as well, the training. Could you say a little bit more about how you kind of built up your expertise in order to have this great success that you've had so far?
Yeah, I think when I was looking at courses, when I was starting the business myself, I'm a single mum, so for me, being quite northern, a lot of the courses were all based in London and Birmingham. And I did notice it was a silver lining to come out of COVID when your courses went online. So for me, that was easily accessible. I didn't need to travel. I didn't need to, obviously, the expenses for overheads as a new company, for staying over and training and things like that. It was really easy for me to be able to access a course, access qualifications online. So I mean, again, I wanted to do a good job. Brexit was looming, and I wanted to upskill to be able to pass that on to my customers, and keep them compliant. So I knew any knowledge that I get, I would be able to pass forward. And again, further reinforcing our values of keeping everybody compliant across the board. So this was when I think I completed around about 30 courses with yourselves over lockdown and one qualification. I was part way through my second qualification, but because of the volume of work, it was just, you know, it's something I will go back to eventually. But it was just brilliant to be, you know, around like-minded individuals on a day, and I think you kept me safe throughout lockdown as well.
I mean, it's 30 courses seems like a lot to do at any time of your life, but particularly during the lockdown as well. So that's an amazing to hear. And I guess it's the virtual, isn't it, of the lockdowns? They have created this more digital way of learning, of picking up knowledge. So I guess that is maybe one of the few positive side effects of what was a difficult couple of years for a lot of people. In terms of the impact that, you know, these courses have had in your career, I mean, Richard, could you say a bit first on this? Could you say just like how's it helped you in your job, I suppose, studying trade?
I think it's been a major positive impact for myself and for my colleagues, especially with the likes of Brexit. You know, all the trade agreements pretty much hit the reset button. So it was really beneficial for us that we had to make sure that we were up to date with all the latest legislations and all the documentations required to go to the countries that we do go to. You don't want to be in a situation where your documents are holding up your consignment to get to deliver, because your customer's going to be unhappy and the chances of them to come back to you to reorder more product are very slim. So we as a team made the decision to make sure that if there are courses available, that we attend them and that we take note, and that if there are any changes or if there's any suggestions that we've been told to bring them to the table and make those changes. So it was really beneficial for us, especially because our 80% of our trade is out of the UK. So we really need to be always up to date with all the latest legislations and all the latest trade deals, etc. So really beneficial.
I mean, Richard, you touched on Brexit, and Lindsay, you mentioned it briefly as well. I mean, to what extent has Brexit made getting this expertise even more important than it already was?
Yeah, I think it's we needed some kind of reassurance, really. You know, I think it was kind of your courses and the information that I was able to gain from yourselves helped me to pass that on to my customers to keep them compliant. And I think you're second guessing it until you've had that confirmed by the experts and yourselves and then your trainers. For me, I did lean on the Institute of Export a lot, which was why it took so many courses, just to be sure that my knowledge was up to date and I was telling people the right things, you know, along the line.
And I guess beyond Brexit as well, there's a lot going on in the world now with different shipping crises due to the conflicts, and mostly the increasing importance of environmental regulation as well. Just wondering, do either of you kind of view kind of studying as being important in terms of just staying up with the trends and what's going on in global trade? Richard, how about yourself? I just know your product is very much has a carbon kind of aspect to it. So how important is that sort of trends element to trade as well?
Yes, it's very important. I think that your carbon footprint is discussed worldwide these days. So for us, it's very important to promote that our product, although you might ship it to Japan or Malaysia or all different places around the world, just fundamentally our product is very, very low in carbon. One of our rolls is the equivalent to 2 tanks of ready poured cement. So the product really speaks for itself in that retrospect. So it's vitally important.
Terrific. You both talked about qualification, colleagues now doing courses as well. I mean, for those on the line who are considering putting their staff through, one of our courses or any course in international trade, what would you say to those people considering it if they're, say, got an export team who need to get these skills? Why should they do this training? Lindsay, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they want to invest in themselves? Why wouldn't they want to make sure they're doing the best job they can possibly do and equipped with all the knowledge? You know, my staff are always welcome to take any courses that they feel. I do feel with a lot of the qualifications, you do have to be self-motivated, so that's not something I would push people onto unless they really want to do it. You know, the day courses are brilliant for updating your knowledge quite quickly. And listening to Steve there about talking about the apprenticeships is definitely something I'm going to consider for my son. I mean, he's 13 years old now. He's shown a keen interest in international trade, and it's great to know that he can work alongside me and train at the same time. So, you know, it's definitely a brilliant package that's been offered by the Institute.
And Richard, what would you say to anyone within a company considering kind of putting their staff through training in this sort of area?
Yeah, I think it's vitally important. And for me, having experience in logistics, the only way I gained experience in logistics was pretty much hitting the ground running. So when I started doing logistics, there was very little courses around. So you were relying on other people's experiences to gain knowledge. Whereas now with these courses, you have the courses to learn, but you have the courses also to make sure what you're doing is what you've learned over the years is correct. And for us, it's, you know, our company promotes continuous improvement. So the only way to continuously improve is to do courses like these. So it's a no-brainer for me. I think that, you know, the more courses you do, the better.
Final question. This one's just come to mind. So we've released this paper today, which is about 7 key skills in international trade. I was just wondering, we asked the audience earlier what they thought the most important skill was. I was just wondering what each of you think would say is the most important. So just as a reminder, the skills in the paper are understanding rules, knowing how goods are made, numeracy, project management, communication, IT and data, and leadership. Richard, if I can start with you, which do you think is the most important and why?
I think communication is vitally important. Communication with the people that you've taken in charge to transport your goods, and communication with your end customer. Because again, without courses like these, you are very much relying on your customer to know the knowledge, to give you the knowledge to import their goods into the country. So communication is vitally important, and thorough communication as well. So, you know, making sure that your emails are worded so there's no loss in translation, etc. And planning as well, and taking into consideration that, okay, for example, if you are importing goods via sea, there are going to be delays. There's no doubt about it. So you've got to, you know, you've got to basically allocate a factor like that into what you're planning, because when you have containers, they'll tell you, oh, it'll be the ETA is the 20th of September, for example. The next day that could have been pushed back a week because of vessel routings or things like that. So you've got to be aware of all the factors involved. So that's that, yeah.
Great answer. And Lindsay, yourself, which skill do you think is the most important in international trade?
Yeah, I do completely agree with what Richard is saying there, but I do also think understanding rules prevents a lot of delays and things that can go wrong. So I think for me, it is understanding the rules. There's so many different rules that you've got to be aware of that can cause delays, you know, and can cause problems. So for me, that's probably the most important.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lindsay. Well, we're starting to get towards the end of today's webinar, so I'd like to thank Lindsay and Richard for sharing your experiences and insights just now. Thank you so much for joining us today. And indeed, thank you as well to Steve and Sandra for explaining the importance of trade skills in the first part of the webinar as well. Before we go on the next slide, I'd just like to remind listeners that the Chartered Institute empowers global trade by equipping individuals and businesses with this expertise. We've discussed several of the ways in which you can upskill your staff with trade and supply chain skills, and you can go to the website for more information about how we can support you with your trade expertise. On the next slide, we'll just do a final poll in which you can let us know, basically, if you'd like to speak with our team of advisory leads, not advisory, sorry, our team of training kind of support leads who are divided by sectors. So hopefully that will help give you some kind of more tailored industry-specific support, and they can talk to you about how the Chartered Institute is able to support you with these training qualifications and/or apprenticeships. So as you respond to that poll, just a reminder, we will be sending the slides and a recording of today's webinar in a follow-up email, which you should get in the next day or so. This email will also include a link to the 7 skills report we've discussed a fair bit today, which you can also find on the website export.org.uk and via the link in the chat. Please do get in touch if for any reason this email doesn't come through to your main inbox. As you leave the webinar in a moment, please do let us know what you thought of the session and any suggestions for our future events by completing the short exit survey. I'll just give you a few more seconds to answer the poll, so I'll give you a short countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you everyone for answering. All that's left for me to say on the final slide is a big thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you found it enlightening, and we hope to see you on the next one. Goodbye.